What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today I'm going through my top 10 favorite Roger Waters songs. I already did the albums, and I predict based on the comments from my album ranking. I only did the 4 studio albums, didn't do his opera, didn't do his soundtrack, didn't do anything else he did. Didn't do his classical album with narration. Just the 4 rock albums. Predict Based on the comments of my rankings of my 4 favorite Roger Waters albums, I predict that this list of my top 10 favorites is going to be even less popular than my ranking of the 4 albums. The album that everybody else seems to love more than anything, the one I had at number 4, it's only on this list once. I'm sure that's going to upset many of people. And I'm realizing as I listen, like I realize one thing, I don't ever listen to Roger Waters songs. I have a playlist of, I don't even think I have a playlist of Roger Waters songs. I don't think I've ever made a playlist of Roger Waters solo album songs because anytime I want to listen to Roger Waters, I want that complete experience of those 4 albums. Like, I think he does a really good job of creating albums. So sitting down and actually looking at songs and pulling them out of the context of the album just felt weird. Like, this is by far the weirdest artist I've done on this channel. I think I've done like 25 different artists thus far. This one felt weird, pulling songs out of the context of the album. I do think not necessarily that the forest is greater than the trees, but the forest is so integral to his trees that like pulling them out just seems weird. So it was a weird list to come up with. But then I realized as I listened to these albums, these are the songs that really hook me and whatever reasons, who cares? But yeah, so I'm going to go through my 10, just going to list them. And then at the end, I'll put the actual list on the screen for those of you that are visual learners. But yeah, here we go. How did we get here from Frank Zappa, since everything's got to fall under Frank Zappa's concept of the big note? They jammed on stage, Moogie's 1969, right? I think that's when it was. Go to YouTube, Google Pink Floyd, Frank Zappa. There's an audio clip and there's a video clip. Sound quality isn't that great on either one of those. But anyways, here we go. Number 10 is 4:33 a.m. Right 3 minutes into that dream. This is off Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. This is called Running Shoes. This is the dun 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 dun, that really hardcore riff that comes in. It's like the second song on that album. I just really I like the sound of this song. It just has a really strange sound about it. There's an aggression to it. I don't know, it's very Pink Floyd proggy, but at the same time, some of the tones and timbers I think are a little bit off. I love the delivery. I love the way it moves the story forward. I love the lyrics. It's like the second major song on the album. It's like the first major song. The first one's a little like, soft singing, talking with like quiet stuff. And this is when it just comes in heavy with just this crazy dun, 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 dun. And then we're off into this dream, for the next 38 minutes. But yeah, my number 10, 4:33 a.m., second track off Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. Number 9 is The Powers That Be off Radio Chaos. Just a fun, silly song. This is an absolutely, I always think of both Radio Chaos and Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. When I'm listening to them, I kind of imagine that they're like theatrical productions. And for Radio Chaos, it's like you have on the stage, you have like Jim Ladd in the radio station. You have Billy in his wheelchair talking to Jim Ladd. And then as the story gets told, maybe different actors act out different parts. But then you have this Greek chorus on one side who comes in. You have like a guitar player every once in a while comes in and does stuff. You have Paul Carrack, one of the musicians, who every once in a while sings. And The Powers That Be is the song where everybody comes in and has like a little bit of a part. Paul Carrack comes in and delivers an amazing line. The guitarist has I think it's like an 11, 12 note guitar solo or guitar interlude that is just perfect. Like, it feels like it's going to go off into epic proportions, but it's like really short. It's like a dozen notes. The backup singers in this song are interacting with Roger Waters are fantastic. Some of my favorite lines on this album on Radio Chaos come from this song. The Powers That Be, just the blacked out cabs, contingency plans. Just, it's an awesome, fun, silly little song. Yeah. And on the CD, the beginning of the following track, Sunset Strip, is indexed to be part of this. So it's indexed incorrectly, so it's about an extra 40 seconds longer than it should be on the CD. But so you get Fish Report with a beat. So unintentionally, you get part of Sunset Strip on the CD, which makes it even better. Number 8, sorry, y'all, this is the only song off Amused to Death. It is probably the most obvious song to pick on this album, but it is What God Wants Part 1. Absolutely love this song. I love this album. Again, it's just my 4th favorite of his 4. But I love that whole concept of like what God wants, and essentially as he's delivering the lyrics, he's setting up this dichotomy between good things, because if it's good in the world, God put it there. But if you're going to claim that God gave you the good things, you kind of got to claim and support the fact and like admit that he gave you the bad things, because why else would they be here, right? What God wants, he gets, because he's God, right? It's just one of those good, upbeat, fun numbers, kind of reminiscent of the Powers That Be. I like this aspect of Roger Waters' solo album. The him singing, the backup singers coming in and kind of echoing what he's singing, that sort of give and take, that like kind of progressive thump, that drive that these two songs have. I think the second version of this, What God Wants Part 2, has this really neat sort of synth line that runs through it that is excellent. The third part is a really good guitar solo. But I think overall, like this is the first song on this album, like it starts off rather slowly and then this drops. And when this drops, it's just like, I'm in it. It propels me to the rest of the album. But yeah, it's the obvious one off Amused to Death. I know that. But it really is my only one. It is the only one on here that I think is on this list. Well, it is the only one that's on this list. As much as I like that album, that is the one where the album itself, the sequencing and the contrast, especially in the second half of the album, make all of the songs better because they're together for me. Number 7, Smell the Roses, off Is This the Life We Really Want? This is another one of those upbeat stompers. This, What God Wants, the Powers That Be kind of serve the same purpose. You know, you have a couple ballads and then you have these numbers that just hit hard. Some really good rhythm section just driving it forward. This is probably the heaviest song off that last album. It's got a nice little breakdown in the middle where things get weird and then we come back to the stomping part. It's just a nice, really good, heavy song on the second half of his last album. And that second half, I think probably maybe my favorite of the last 2 albums, from like Bird in a Gale on, just each of those songs and the difference that the sort of contrast and relief between the different songs. And this one is just the heavy hitter. This is the heavyweight on that second half of that album. Number 6, got something in my throat. Number 6 is 5:01 a.m. We're now 31 minutes into our dream, and it's time for one of the cheesiest songs on here. There's a lot of cheese on this list. I like Roger Waters' cheese. It's The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, Part 10. This song sounds nothing like anything else on this album. It is a complete anomaly. It just almost doesn't feel like it belongs. It feels like an actual pop song in the middle of a bunch of songs that feel like if you take them out of the album, the rest of the things before and after them kind of fall apart because they're all like interwoven. This is the one song that is not interwoven, that feels like a standalone piece. Almost like he wrote the song and was like, let's construct a narrative around this song, or vice versa. He wrote the album and somebody said, there's nothing resembling a hit at all on here. Can you give us something that maybe could be a single? This one seems like it could be a single. It's a fun song. Guy's hitchhiking. He gets picked up by a truck driver. The truck driver kicks him out of his cab because he's going to throw up as he's reminiscing about his former lovers. At that point, this song starts. A woman comes over, sees him on the other side of the street, hits on him. There's a whole Yoko Ono thing about Yoko Ono. Shane! There's a reference to Shane, the old Western. And then at the end, he jumps back on the curb again and we're off. It's the pros and cons of hitchhiking. So apparently you get a hookup with some bored housewives while you're hitchhiking. But yeah, 5:01 a.m. That's my 6th favorite. Number 5, we're back to Radio Chaos. Home. the second song on side B has this really neat dun 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 dun, just this like repetitive sort of bass drum thump that just kind of propels the whole thing forward. Another one of those sort of Roger Waters list songs where he lists off a bunch of things that, represent to him what home is. What are some of the things he, and this kind of sets up the fine. Oh, it's a could be song. Could be Jerusalem or it could be Cairo. Could be Port Berlin or it could be Prague. Could be Warsaw and it could be Moose Jaw. So it's one of those could be type songs where he's just got a list of things that he's rattling off. All the things that could be home. Goes to places and he goes to more like generic places like, could be a cabin by a bend in the river. And then we go to like people, could be your father and it could be your mother. I don't know. I think it's a really neat song. It's kind of one of his longer, more epic proggy type things. Kind of gets weird at the end where we get, could be a kid in the middle of the bomb site, could be a fanatic, could be a terrorist, could be a dentist, could be a psychiatrist. So then we start to get, could be a face in the crowd. So we start to get a whole bunch of other things. We start to lean in towards the war energy and the Cold War stuff as the song goes on. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really good song lyrically. I think it's a fun song musically, and it fits perfectly between Sunset Strip and the following song, 4 Minutes, on this album. That's Home. Number 4 is 4 Minutes, which is like a bunch of kind of little different songs, it feels like, pieced together. This is very much here because it moves forth the narrative of the album, which is boiled down to its essence. This kid in a wheelchair is talking with Jim Ladd, this radio DJ. He can't speak, so he hacks into like some computer system or something so he can Stephen Hawking his speech. So he's talking with Jim Ladd, and over the course of the album, he starts like a global thermonuclear war type thing, and this 4 minutes is how long they have to live. Jim's cracking little jokes early on. Something about saying goodbye, this it's goodbye. There's a couple puns in there. Some really nice of the Greek chorus background singers come in and sing this absolutely beautiful part in there. What's his name? Roger Waters has this little nice part. It's just a really interesting little song that pulled out from the context of the album maybe doesn't work as well, but in the context of Radio Chaos, which is in the released version, only 8 songs. It's, the penultimate song. Everything kind of leads up to this before we get The Tide is Turning After Live Aid, this sort of like, ballady, reflective type thing. It just works perfectly. And I think it's a great culmination. And it feels like an urgent 4 minutes. And it's just something Roger Waters does really well, I think. But yeah, 4 minutes. Yeah, just my number 4 song randomly. Number 3 is 4:41 a.m., Sexual Revolution. We're 11 minutes into this album, and already it's time for the Sexual Revolution. Amazing Clapton guitar on this. Like, I think Clapton, some of his best playing of the 80s. It's almost all downhill after this for him. In fact, I think it was, as far as his studio albums go. But yeah, I love this song. It's got a nice bluesy feel, got some nice rhythm play in it. Guitar play is excellent. Got some good lyrics, of course, by Roger Waters. What else can we say about this song? What are the lyrics for this? Yeah, take out the dagger and let's have a stab at the sexual revolution. Yeah, I just love everything about this. And at the end, it kind of goes in. It ends on like a duh, like the story ends and we segue immediately into the next song and it kind of leads us into the next song. So again, another song that's weird to pull out of context. But I think the guitar playing on here is so fantastic. And I'm a Clapton fan. 70s Clapton fan. Love me some 70s Clapton. I just think all of those albums, I understand why they weren't critically acclaimed or why they're just not generally loved by too many people, but I love the laid back, chill vibe that Clapton has in his 70s. And this to me is just him hitting harder than he ever does in the 70s and ever would again in the 80s. And he kind of makes this song for me. But I love the lyrics. I love everything about this song. Yeah, Sexual Revolution is number 3. Number 2, another one of those weird sort of atmospheric, it's serving the purpose of the album, and that is Bird in a Gale off the Is This the Life We Really Want? Just an absolutely phenomenally headphone indulgent song. It's got not a lot of lyrics. I think it's about 5.5, 6 minutes long. It's got a lot of really good atmospherics. It almost kind of is reminiscent of 4 minutes in that. It's got towards the end of it, it's got this really nice keyboard sort of wash that reminds me of dogs, where it's like you want to relax in these keyboards because they're just so all encompassing, but there's this metallic edge that just like this is this like almost high pitched metallic edge that won't let you relax, that just makes it unsettling and uncomfortable, and like like you're a bird and you can fly, but you're in a gale, so you kind of can't control yourself. So it has a little bit of that unease where like good and bad things are happening at the same time, and it's just there's something about this song that just makes me uneasy. And to me, it's like the heart of that final album. And everything before it kind of leads into it, and everything after it kind of trails out of it. Just fantastic album. I mean, fantastic song. On what was a good album. And then number one, 4:50 a.m., the lead off track off side 2 off Pros and Cons and Hitchhiking, Go Fishing. To me, this is a movie in itself. To me, if Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking was deconstructed and then resequenced chronologically, I don't know, because Sexual Revolution and the one before it lead into it, but it seems to me like this is the incident that should happen first, and then everything else maybe follows it. But then what you have before on side A kind of also leads into it. So who knows? But I have thoughts. But I love this song, and it's 2 of my all-time favorite moments of a Roger Waters song. So it's a story about a couple that decide to move to the country to build a cabin. Kids are cooling their heels in the fishing pond that they made. They're growing their own vegetables. Mom's knitting clothes and stuff like that. Life's going pretty good. There are hard times. At some point, one of my favorite lines a friend from town wrought his soul, stole your heart. So as things fall apart and things between the couple aren't good, this guy comes into town, seduces her. They fall in love with each other, end up moving away. The marriage breaks up. He's going to leave, head out on his own. She takes the kids and goes back to town. But there are 2 lines. One is that line where he says, a friend from town wrought his soul, stole your heart. And that little wrought his soul aside is just, I love that. But then I think one of the saddest lines, and Roger Waters delivers it so perfectly, is you get the story and they're going to break up. She's going to take the kids and go back to town. He's going to go off on his own. And right before the Greek chorus comes in and is like, so leaving all our hopes and dreams in the wind and the rain. And they kind of catch you up on the narrative. Right before that happens, there's like a spoken word part slightly in the background where Roger Waters, the main character, the narrator, is talking to his wife. And he says, almost in this like defiant, like, oh yeah, you right. Well, guess what? And he goes like, I'm going to show you. He goes, and I said, and this is the line. He goes, I said, go to him. Like he's throwing down the gauntlet. Like he's challenging her to like, yeah, you love him. You hooked up with him. Why don't you go with him? Right. Like expecting almost like, no, you can't mean that. Like, right. That kind of reaction. That's the way it feels in his delivery. And so he says, the line is, I said, go to him. And she said, okay. And the way he goes, and she said, okay, breaks my heart every time. Because you can hear in his voice that he thought she was going to put up a fight, or she was going to argue, or she was going to be like, you want me to go to him? Well, then I'll go to him. And like, there'd be another fight, and maybe that'd make the relationship last a little longer. And as long as they're fighting, they're still together, right? All that stuff. But nah, she said, okay. And man, that just breaks my heart, man. I feel the pain of that narrator so much. And then the song that follows after this, which I almost put on the list, is called For the First Time Today, Part 1, which is another reason why I think this happens before what happens on side A, because that's Part 2, I think the very first line of that song is, I realized for the first time today that you were gone, or something like that. And it's just this absolutely heartbreaking thing. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on my top 10 favorite songs. And those are the songs right there, people. Look at that. In list form. Those are them. I'm sorry to break all your hearts. There is only one amused to death. But, hey, Gotta be honest with myself. I'm not here to make you guys happy. I'm just here to like share my thoughts. And if we agree, we agree. If we don't, we don't, right? That's life. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know what songs I should listen to more. Let me know why I'm completely wrong and while I'm missing the boat on Amused to Death. You know how these things work. Comment, subscribe, like, and more importantly, go listen to music, people. And if you still haven't listened to the pros and cons of hitchhiking and discovered how completely awesome it is, go do that. Because I still think that's one of the best concept albums ever. One of the best albums ever. Love that. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching, y'all. Peace. Talk to you later.